Good evening or afternoon, depending on what time you're looking at this. I am Derek Terry, host of I'm Not Complaining, I'm Just Saying, where if you're going to complain, bring some solutions to the table. So I'm out here, out here in the environment. We're going to go over, well, actually, I will discuss who my special guest will be in a moment, but like all my shows, I start out with what the hell is Derek complaining about now? And I'm actually going to take an excerpt from my book, which is called I'm Not Complaining, I'm Just Saying. So, really, the gist of the show. And our topic today is going to be focusing on mental health. And we'll get a little bit into it as I finish this, but I want to read you a small chapter from the book to kind of set the tone. So, this chapter in my book is called Why Do I Have to Be a Product of My Environment? And this is from a student perspective. I firmly believe most students are on the same academic learning curve until they get into the third or fourth grade because of the many changes in curriculum, students' cognitive abilities, and social behavior. However, somewhere along the line, some students' lives took a traumatic turn, and these students' issues were not addressed with any sense of urgency. For example, there was a student named Jillian. Jillian was a short, quiet, yet articulate young lady who defied the odds despite her traumatic instances. Jillian witnessed both her parents getting shot and killed right in front of her. She was placed in the Department of Social Services and received minimal counseling. Now, would you expect her to excel at a high academic level? It didn't happen, and for almost 5 years, she was labeled slow, defiant, poorly motivated, stupid, smartass, and basically a subpar student. However, all of these labels were soon erased when she entered eighth grade and met a kind, caring, angel-like Renaissance teacher named Mrs. Noble. Mrs. Noble saw something in Jillian that her previous teachers neglected to see, her pain and also her potential. The, the kind-hearted and godly Mrs. Noble introduced Jillian to dance and told her she could be somebody, go to college, and make a better life for herself. Earlier in Jillian's life, she was told the opposite. Both parents were drug addicts. Her mother exchanged sex for money to buy drugs. Jillian's path in life was predetermined by some of her teachers and classmates. But through the guidance and encouragement of Mrs. Noble, Jillian was able to defy the odds and have a successful high school career. In addition, she went on to earn a full academic scholarship to a very prestigious and nationally recognized university. However, we know all stories don't have a fairy tale ending like this one. Many teachers, leaders, and adults need to do more uplifting and empowering to troubled students. Putting them down and accepting their behavior as normal is not always the best option. I am sincerely and wholeheartedly indebted to Mrs. Noble for saving my life. I miss my parents dearly, but I don't hold the anger I once had for them dying because I know their spirit lives in me each and every day. Through dance, I was able to release the pain and anger I've been feeling and transform it into something positive. If I can take anything from my experience, let others know that regardless how much adversity you face in life, there's always a way to persevere, and there are those like Mrs. Noble who genuinely care. So this is taken from an excerpt chapter from my book, and when you look at it, the premise behind it was dealing with mental health. So today, I have lead therapist and owner, Dr. Deirdre Sorrell, so who's sitting in the waiting room. So I'm gonna bring her in. And she is a licensed professional counselor, approved supervisor. She is a certified trauma professional and trained in very innovative emotional freedom techniques. So Dr. Sorrell, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here this evening.
And I just got done telling the audience, or reading an excerpt from my book called I'm Not Complaining, I'm Just Saying, about a student who had faced some trauma in her life and did not get the counseling. So this show really is about not only your professional expertise, but some things, some tips, some solutions, just something that we could give to the parents as well. And maybe somebody out there who just needs to hear something. So, with that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the mental health field.
Okay. Well, I've been in the field of counseling psychology for about 20 years, actually a little more than 20 years now. So I started in 1999 as a counselor at the University of Maryland, College Park, working with the Upward Bound program. And I've been, after I left the University of Maryland, College Park, I became a school psychologist. And I've been a school psychologist for a little over 20 years now. And I also have a private practice, Synergy Wellness Therapeutic Services, where I provide individual counseling to children and adults. And I do see some families at times.
Okay. And she's also, and we'll talk about her books later. She's also an author of three books, I believe. And
I have a little bit, yes.
Or more, is it more than three? I saw at least three on your website.
So I have 4 books now. I should have updated that, but I just wrote a book on bullying, and the book sort of looks into some of the motivations or some of the reasons why children bully in the first place. So I thought it would be good to kind of come from that standpoint, because typically when we read books about bullying, it's typically from the victim standpoint. So this takes the standpoint of the victim and also the bully, so we can understand all areas.
Okay, so definitely look forward to hearing a little bit more about that near the end of the show. But as we get started, the title of the show is "Why Do People Believe Kids Don't Need Mental Health Services, but rather just good parenting?" I've heard that as a former educator, and I still hear it. When you hear something like that, what resonates with you when you hear that statement?
Well, I think that sometimes that comes out of the children should be seen and not heard mentality. And what that says to me is that sometimes parents and adults tend to kind of brush off the feelings that children may have and sort of diminish the feelings that children have. And what happens is when if the child is definitely suffering from trauma or some other type of mental health issue, and you see it in school, or if it happens to unfortunately go to the justice system, typically parents are like, well, what happened? So it really behooves us as parents to really pay attention to children and pay attention to how they're feeling, so that we can provide the support that they need through mental health assistance if they need it.
And I definitely agree with that. Things that I've seen, especially when we talk about the parental involvement, sometimes is lacking and sometimes it's there. But from a mental health, when we talk about mental health from a societal point of view, it has a negative connotation that has been traditionally been a stigma, particularly in the Black community. Do you agree? Why not?
Well, I definitely agree that there's a stigma, and there's been a stigma across the board with all cultures. But like you said, it is definitely more prevalent in the African American community. And I have my own theories about why I think this occurs. One, I think that as African Americans, some of us tend to view therapy as a luxury. So we may view going to the medical doctor and getting a checkup, or going if you feel sick, that's a necessity. But going to a therapist to get treatment may be seen as a luxury, because face it, with mental health issues, you can't see it. So if you don't see it, sometimes people ignore it as if it's not there until it gets so bad that you can't come back from it. And another thing, is slavery. And slavery still has a huge impact on us as African Americans, even to this day. And in slavery, we were dehumanized, meaning African Americans were seen as not really feeling pain. And you can do research on that and read all the articles where they say that in textbooks and medical textbooks, they said African Americans didn't feel pain like white people. So as a result of that, we didn't get the treatment that we deserved. We didn't get the treatment that we needed. And we've taken on a lot of those mentalities by saying, boy, you all right, get up. Girl, stop being dramatic.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, because I know, like, for me, just from the military point of view, I was raised Army, but I went Army, then I switched to Air Force, and it was frowned upon to say that something was wrong with you mentally. For me, and I'll say this without getting emotional. Counseling saved my life. I did not know that I had PTSD. I didn't know that I had all these symptoms. It wasn't probably until my deployment back from Afghanistan that everything just took a turn for the worse. Um, there was, and people understand with PTSD, which for those who don't know is post-traumatic stress disorder, is that you can be traumatized by something you've done or something you witnessed somebody do. And, me, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but it, one of the things that I noticed that I was going through, I was reliving things. I'm very negative, um, anxiety, very irritable with certain sounds. And those are things that through counseling, I was able, I'm not going to say 100% to cope, because I still have to go through stuff, but the stigma for a Black man to say, guess what? I think something's wrong with me. You just didn't want to be labeled. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to be labeled. And like I said, I don't talk about it too much, but I didn't want to be labeled because it's like anything. Who wants to be labeled? But you realize being labeled is not a bad thing. What's bad is when you don't seek the help. And then family members can get hurt, or, unfortunately, somebody could commit suicide. And with veterans, 22 veterans per day commit suicide. And a lot of that is due to mental illness. So one of the other things that, I wanted to ask you is you do a lot of counseling with kids. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes.
So what are some, without going into, names and all that, but what are some of the issues that you've had to deal with mental health? I'm going to say issues, but what are some of the mental health issues that you've had to counsel kids on?
Well, I would say that the number one issue that I deal with is trauma. So, and trauma can come in various ways. One, it can come from abuse. So a child who's been abused by a parent or some other family member. And we're speaking of either physical abuse or sexual abuse or emotional abuse. Children can be traumatized because of things that go on in their environments. Maybe they witnessed something violent, some domestic violence, or even being bullied in school. That's very traumatic as well. The other issue that I deal with is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is the number one childhood disorder. So I have a lot of children who are referred to me because they have had issues with hyperactivity or inattention in the classroom and need to find ways to calm down and attend and pay attention in class better.
But do you think, and just with me, do you think that some of the ADHD is attributed to male, female? And what I mean by that, as a former special educator, I had students that were quote unquote labeled ADHD, but when they were around me, they were fine. So I used to call selective ADHD. I said, because, you pick and choose who you want to act the fool around. When you get around me, you're straight. So I'm not saying that they're misdiagnosed, but, could that be, I guess, one of the characteristics of ADHD is that they turn it off and on with certain genders or something traumatic which may happen in life, which allows them to favor maybe listening to men or listening to women?
Well, I think with true ADHD, that's a true brain-based disorder. So you can't really turn it on or turn it off. And that's when it's truly occurring in the child. I think that what happens is it's very difficult to diagnose ADHD in its true form because that would require some sort of evaluation of the brain, some sort of CAT scan or something like that, where you can actually see, not only look at the brain, but look at how it lights up and how it fires in certain situations. And that just doesn't happen when we're identifying ADHD. So typically ADHD is identified based on feedback from the parent and in best practices, feedback from the teacher and school staff. Sometimes ADHD is diagnosed just based on what the parent says. So that's how it's getting to be something that I feel has been overdiagnosed. So in situations like that, sometimes you have kids who are actually depressed. You have kids who are traumatized. You have kids who are just bored with the traditional school environment, and it's kind of showing up as being inattentive and hyperactive when it's actually something else. That's where therapy comes in, because a good therapist will be able to say, well, I don't quite see ADHD, but I see depression, or I don't quite see ADHD, but I see something different.
I like I said, I know for me, it took me a while to really realize some of the things that caused me or triggered me to be the way that I get sometimes. But I also had trauma that was suppressed, didn't even know. I mean, literally, there was things that I literally had trapped inside of my brain, somewhere in my brain, that happened when I was 5, 6 years old, and didn't realize that once it came out, it was good to get it out, but at the same time, it made me think like, wow, no one was able to figure that out as far as either my parents, my teachers. And I think one of the things that as adults we seem to, I guess, ignore is that when kids go through traumatic experiences, we have to be able, I'm not necessarily saying empathize, but you have to say, okay, if this student is going through something, what is it that we can do to get that student help? So one of the ways is by what you do, providing counseling. But what are some things that some parents can do to help out? And should they play a pivotal, can't get the words out, a critical role in this process?
Parents play a very important role in the process. Parents, they play the most important role because they're the ones who they're around the children most of the time. So one, parents have to be supportive. They have to communicate to their child that their door is open, their ears are open to listen to what the child is going through, that they're not going to judge the child, they're going to help the child and support the child. And love the child unconditionally, because some children feel that if they say, well, mommy, uncle such and such touched me, that their mother's not going to love them anymore. And that's real stuff right there. So the parents have to really create that safe space. It's also important for the parents who work along with the therapist and to take the suggestions that the therapist gives. The other thing that parents really need to do is provide that stable household. You don't have to have the biggest house on the block. You don't have to be the richest parent. You don't have to have your kids draped in Gucci and Louis Vuitton and all of that. If you provide a stable household where children have consistency, they know when dinner time is, you're sitting down eating dinner together, they know on the weekends they're going to have family time, church, whatever, and you provide that loving household, that is the best gift you can give to a child.
And I agree. But unfortunately, we know that, especially, I started teaching in Baltimore City, where I don't know how many of my students, but I would say at least 50%, maybe 60, could be 70, did not grow up in stable households. I look at a student that, literally witnessed mom and dad getting shot.
Mm.
How do you get through school? For me, it was a norm to lose 2 students out of my class a year to gun violence. I mean, it was the norm. I'm saying it wasn't like I literally would sit there and like, I wonder which 2 is going to happen to, because you don't have to be a product of your environment, but sometimes you can be at the wrong place at the wrong time and things happen. But I think, to me, what's one of the most frustrating parts of it is that you have a society that says, well, you know what, they're used to it, so they should be able to deal with it. And look at it from an academic standpoint. if you have to constantly live through gun violence day after day after day, but the expectation is that you get A's, regardless of all this is going on, how, I'm not going to say it's not impossible because I see it happen, but these are things where a lot of kids that have stable homes don't have to deal with. How do you address something like that?
Well, there are so many, you named so many issues there, and it is very, very difficult you got to peel back the layers. And if you look at it in terms of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you cannot get to that point of, okay, asking a child, okay, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Until you get them to a point of safety first. You can't talk to a child about trauma. You can't work on trauma until you eliminate the traumatic event. Because what's going to happen is you sit a child down in therapy and you're talking about, okay, well, let's meditate. Let's do mindfulness. Let's do some deep breathing. And they're looking at you and saying, hello, somebody's going to be shooting tonight in my neighborhood. What are you talking about? So that's why it's important to find a way for that child to be safe. And that's when it really takes a village, and it takes wraparound services. A therapist, if we had magic wands, I'm telling you, we would use them. But getting that child to a place, a sense of safety. And then once they feel safe, once they know they're safe, then they can work on, okay, all right, let me stabilize myself. Let me be stable emotionally because I'm safe now. I know that I'm going to eat. I know that I have clothes. I know that my parents are okay. My parents or my parents or whoever I live with, they're okay. I have a stable home. So that's what has to be in place first before you can work on the other stuff. And and that includes academics as well, because you cannot pay attention if you are thinking about the fact that your cousin got shot last night. And if you have a teacher who doesn't understand that, that's the teacher who's going to say, well, I think Johnny has ADHD. And they don't even know or even care that, no, Johnny has trauma.
Yeah, and I think the other part, and you mentioned something very interesting that stood out, is when you have kids that are dealing with this. I always just tell new teachers, 99.9% of the issues that the students bring to the school have nothing to do with you. So don't get upset if they're lashing out at you. A lot of times the school is a safe haven. That is their place to vent. That is their place to act up. But when they start going outside of the norm, as a teacher, you have to process this. And really, as a parent, you have to process this. Which brings me to another question is it common for parents to be undiagnosed or to have possible mental health issues? They just fail to ignore or just don't want to admit it, because I know some of it can be passed on from mother to child or from father to child. So is it uncommon? Is it common for you to experience that? And if you do, how does that make your job a little bit more difficult? Hello?
It's very, very common for there to be family history. And, typically when a child is being diagnosed with a mental health disorder, if there is a family history, then that's something that definitely makes them more vulnerable, or makes a clinician sure that, okay, they have these symptoms, they have the family history, more than likely they have this disorder. So when a parent has a disorder and it's untreated, that makes it very difficult, because sometimes a parent can say, I'm all right, nothing's wrong with me. And
Yeah,
you're not, yeah, I'm all right. And
yeah.
a lot of times they're not. But
Yeah,
they're like, okay, and if recommendations are made for the child, and I don't prescribe medication. I don't, the only thing I do is I encourage parents to talk that over with their doctor. But sometimes parents, there are some parents who may have a disorder and they feel that they're fine. They don't want their child to be medicated, and they'll say, no medication, no, you're not getting my child hooked on anything. So, the thing is with that, it really takes a team approach. The parent has to be able to work on what they're dealing with, what they're going through, and some of their misconceptions so that they can support their child. Because the thing is, there are many, many paths to healing. Medication isn't the only one. If you don't want to do medication, there are other things to that can be done to get a child to.
And
Well,
give us about three. What are three things that we can, if the child doesn't want to take medication, I guess it's some coping strategies that some parents could use, depending on what the issue is, but some just general things.
So for general things, I would say since we talk about ADHD, attention problems. So the parent can look into the child's diet, and they don't have to go pay some fancy dietitian to do any tests or anything like that. The parent can just do some research or read a few books and look into their cupboard and see what the child is eating. If the child is eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugar, a lot of fried foods, then that's something that can be adjusted and can make a big difference. Children with autism, I've had parents say that putting their child on a gluten-free diet was the best thing ever. So, and these are parents who are against medication, but they said doing the gluten-free thing worked. There are also different vitamins. I've heard that fish oil can be very helpful. Again, I'm not an MD. I'm not a dietitian, so I'm not giving prescribing anything. But I have heard that fish oil works. And then also there are herbal therapies for older children, of course. If the parent definitely talks to the doctor about it first and make sure it's safe, that's another route. Mm-hmm. I've also heard martial arts is good as well. Martial arts for kids who have ADHD so that they can channel a lot of their energy. So there are so many paths to wellness.
Just any type of physical activity where there's a routine, there's a pattern. And, and like Dr. Sorrell said, she's not a medical doctor. So feel free to seek out your medical doctor for these or nutritionists for these types of tips. As we about to wrap up, and not to get too into it, but me as a former educator, I know that schools play a vital role in dealing with mental health. What is it? And I think a lot of it really deals with budget constraints. So if you can't get and that, unfortunately, because of the corona, I can see a lot of schools' budgets are going to be cut based on that when they should not be, because you're going to be dealing with students that have been cooped up. Some of them may have had to go back to unstable households. They could have been sexually molested. They could have been beat. Right now, they're not getting those services. Now, if they have to come back to school and we don't have that, what if anything can schools play in providing some type of resource or some type of just comfort to these students when they come back?
I think the school plays a huge role, very important role. And before COVID-19, I really think that schools are in a good place by providing services within the school. It is such a privilege to be able to know that there is someone in the school who can see your child for counseling, not just, okay, let me look at your schedule. All right, what you want to change, like when I was in school, but to actually talk to you about what you're feeling and what you're going through. And I have the pleasure of saying that I've worked in schools who have that have provided those services. But like you said, with COVID, it's been difficult. But I will say, as someone who works in the school system, we have tried our best to provide those services remotely. So via a confidential telecounseling or other platform, we've tried our best to do that so that we can provide services to students who need it the most.
I had myself muted. Sorry about that. I said my counseling sessions have been virtual, and but it's different. But I think a lot of times you just want people to talk, and I think some of and listen, and I think with kids, they want to have that ability to know that you care, and to know that it's not about what did you do wrong, because a lot of times they don't even know why they're acting that way. And like I agree, schools do play a vital role. Parents do. It takes a village. So that's why I kind of take offense to when people say it's good. Well, it's the lack of good parenting is why the kids acting this way. That's it, because until you can put yourself in that student's place, who are you to judge? And it takes a village. So which kind of brings me to your books, because I see that one of the things that you've done is not only empower kids and empower adults, but these books are specific to certain things. And as you stated earlier, you wrote 4 books. So could you briefly tell us about each book? And I'm sorry, I can't flash it up, but if you could flash it up, you could. But and just briefly, tell us about a brief synopsis of each book, and how it it's definitely a benefit to kids or parents dealing with some type of mental health issue.
Sure, absolutely. I have 2 of them with me, and the other 2 I'll just describe. But my first book is The Germ.
Yep, I see it.
Yes. The Germ, How to Talk to Children About Racism and Diversity. This book is very important right now as we are in a time of, I would say, racial awakening. We can't say that, we're recognizing racism. It's been going on for years and years and years, but we're waking up and we're seeing.
No time soon, anyways. I wish it would, but it's not. But
right. But many people are waking up and seeing what other people have been just screaming and just complaining about for years. So this is a way to talk to children about racism and police brutality. So I highly recommend this for young children up until about grades 4, depending on their reading level. I highly recommend that for now, for these times. My latest book is Brianna and the Bully Buster Brigade, and this is a book about bullying. So my books are for young children, about, I would say, age grade 4 would be the as high as they go, around age 9 or so. So this book is about a young girl who's bullied in school, but then is able to find out why some of the children have bullied her, and she's able to find a resolution. My other book is called The Hole in My Heart, and The Hole in My Heart is about a child who has suffered from parent abandonment. So he doesn't have his mother or father in his life, and he's trying to cope with living with his grandparents, and just trying to find just the resiliency to move on. And my last book is Giving Up Is Not What's Up. And again, that's another book for young children. This is a book that encourages children to not choose suicide. And some people say, well, why would you write a book about suicide for young children? Well, working in the field of mental health for so many years, I have so many 6 and 7-year-olds who are referred to me because they're suicidal and have actually attempted suicide. So it does happen. It does happen with our children, and it does happen in the Black community. And giving up is not what's up. Is I saw that there weren't any books. There weren't any books that addressed that issue. So I decided to address it, but from a spiritual standpoint. I had to be true to myself as a clinician, but also true to myself as a person. So it's from a spiritual standpoint. And of course, it wasn't written to offend anyone, but I had to keep it real. And so that was the standpoint that I used. It's a book that rhymes, so it's something that kids can kind of read through quickly. It's catchy. It's and I think that all of my books are very, very useful if they apply, if they definitely apply to the situation.
Well, look, there's nothing, if anything, I know about you, you know about me, it's about keeping it real. So if you can't keep it real, there's no sense of even trying to keep. And where can people get those books from? Purchase those books.
So my books are available on Amazon. So just type in Deidre A. Sorrell.
And spell Deidre, because you know
that's that's DEIDRA. Okay. Then A, then Sorrell. That's S as in Sam, ORRELL. And all of my books are, I'd say, $11.99 and less, okay, and lower. So, you know, not a lot of money, but definitely a lot of impact.
Okay. And if there's parents out there or any organization out there that wants to seek your services or your expert opinion, where can they reach you?
So my website is www.synergywellnesstherapy.com, and that's SYNERGY wellnesstherapy.com.
Okay. Well, Dr. Sorrell, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show. I like a very informal setting, so I'm outside in the nature thing, and look like you got a little nature back there as well. But you know, I'm hoping and trusting that the information you provided will definitely benefit someone. And like I always tell people, if anything, if you can get one thing out of this that can help you, it's made an impact. So, you know, on behalf of myself, and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, where if you're going to complain, you better bring some solutions. Definitely appreciate you. And any closing words before I sign off?
Well, I just want to say that with what we're going through in the world with COVID-19 and also the awakening of the racial issues in our country, many people are going to be dealing with stress and anxiety and depression, lots of feelings. So I just want everyone who's listening to know that if you're feeling this way, that is to be expected with everything that you're going through. But please seek out help. If it gets to be too overwhelming, if it's something that's really interfering with your sleep and your ability to function from day to day, reach out, seek help, look at Psychology Today, Therapy for Black Girls, Open Path, seek help. It will definitely benefit you well.
All right, and like I said, once again, thank you for attending. Thank you for those words. Keep in mind, the next show will be is on a Tuesday. I can't remember if we're going to delay it a week or not, but it'll definitely be on a Tuesday at 7:30. And please follow me on Facebook at Not Complaining, Just Saying. And on YouTube, please subscribe to I'm Not Complaining, I'm Just Saying. So I definitely, once again, we want to thank Dr. Sorrell. And just remember, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, where if you're going to complain, bring something. And what I mean by something, solutions to the table. With that, peace and blessings. And thanks again.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.